Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. A long-awaited report into foreign interference came out today, and it finds disinformation poses the single biggest risk to Canadian democracy. Well, what tools are needed to fight disinformation? Plus, what exactly is the DeepSeek chatbot, and why is it topping the app charts and creating a ruckus on the stock markets? We'll get some answers after 12:30. And ahead of the Juno Awards in Vancouver, what's needed to boost BC's music scene? Who are your favorite local musicians, and what do they need to thrive? I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. This morning, the final report of the Au-Yeung inquiry into foreign interference in Canadian politics was presented by Commissioner Au-Yeung, and this is what she had to say.
Foreign actors are no longer content to use traditional means to interfere. They are also using sophisticated technological means and increasingly sowing disinformation in traditional media, but above all, on social media. Distinguishing what is true from what is false is becoming increasingly difficult, and the consequences are, in my view, extraordinarily harmful. The impact of traditional methods should not be underestimated, but the greatest threat, the one that I believe threatens the very existence of our democracy, is disinformation. This threat is all the more nefarious because the means available to counter it are limited and very difficult to implement. Nevertheless, we must not give up, but rather attack it forcefully altogether. This cannot be the sole purview of government. It will not work.
That's Justice Marie-Josée Au-Yeung, the Commissioner of the Public Inquiry into Foreign Interference. Well, federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh spoke later this morning on his reaction to the report.
Justice Au-Yeung has highlighted, I think, one of the biggest points that she made in her report was the deep concern she has regarding misinformation and disinformation, particularly on social media, and how we do not have tools right now to combat that, and it is rampant. The amount of misinformation that is available is rampant, and that is a serious concern for our democracy and for an upcoming election.
We're going to hear from a disinformation expert in a moment, and we're asking you, what are the tools needed to fight disinformation? And how do you distinguish between what's true and what's not? How do you weed out fake news? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. And joining me now is Ronaldo Au-Yeung. He has a master's degree in political science from Simon Fraser University and recently published a research paper about election interference. He's currently studying at the University of Notre Dame as a fellow. And he's here in Vancouver and joins me now. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here.
Well, how concerning is misinformation and disinformation right now?
Well, it's generally very concerning. To use the saying, information is free, but so is mis and disinformation out there. But I would point to a few methods that the government can address as we continue in today's conversation, especially concerning this electoral interference currently going on.
Okay, we'll get to those possible solutions. But right now, why is it such a big concern? How does it spread and where does it come from?
Well, there are, you see, there are a number of social medias out there. People talk about it in close Facebook channels. They talk about it in Twitter groups. They talk about on Truth Social and so on. But what I think the root cause is that there remain a few loophole in our electoral process that are yet to be addressed, especially at the party level, concerning about nomination contests, concerning about leadership races. But general elections are generally safe, and the Elections Canada does have a very robust process, including identity verification at the time of voting, unlike in
Right.
the United States.
Okay. And you're talking now about the election process, and with regard to that, Justice Marie Augue said she after hearing from witnesses that there was no overall threat to the last two elections from foreign interference. There were specific incidents, but overall did not affect the outcome of the general elections. But you say there are still loopholes in our process.
Right, I do see two obvious loopholes in our electoral process concerning about the nomination contest of candidates like MPs at a party level, as well as the registration process of party memberships. I do not see any vulnerability in our general election. That's something the public can be certain of, but I do think some actions has to be taken at a party level. And it's not just about public awareness. I think to come back to mis and disinformation, the government has to do something, make sure that there's no loophole in our electoral process, so that the public can be sure that we're confident about the electoral results we're seeing later this year.
Okay, so what about the disinformation threat? What have you found out is the risk that it poses?
I find it disturbing, to be honest. You see them online all the time. You see posts that are targeted at particular parties, saying that there are people who get benefits from foreign governments. There is definitely a concern among the public. Disinformation-wise, I think that people are entitled to be concerned about this. And thankfully, we do have a timely report from her Justice Ho today. But I do think she is correct that we do not have a traitor in the parliament right now. But as you, or as many of us know, the nomination contest can be very vulnerable. We have seen MP Han Dong admitting that some number of Chinese international students bused to his nomination contest in Don Valley North. That's his writing, if my memory serves me correct.
Okay, so I can see that you're talking a lot about the election process, and that's where you're going. Are you also able to talk about misinformation and disinformation?
For sure. I mean, the public should definitely. I think it's one, the public, and another is it's part of the duty of the government to keep the public informed, especially among some diaspora groups who are watching, for example, news from Chinese sources. I think it is a duty on the government side to raise public awareness, especially among diaspora groups in Canada.
Right, and that's I don't want to take away from what you're saying there, because that was the point of this report, looking into foreign interference. It was a 16-month-long investigation into how foreign actors have tried to interfere in the electoral process during the 2019 and 2021 federal elections. Now, so do you feel that this report falls short in terms of outlining what those loopholes are and to what extent the government needs to address it?
My answer, regrettably, is yes. I do think it falls short. We were just hearing the statements from her Justice Hogue and NDP leader Jack Min-sing. They are addressing concerns at a national level concerning about general election, which is very fair. But beneath our general election, the electoral process starts with the nomination of candidates for each party across the 338 ridings in Canada. It's also about the leadership process, and in those nomination and the leadership process, there remains to be a few loopholes where foreign actors could turn the nominee one way or the other. That's what I'm concerning right now.
Okay. And so how do you address those then? How do you address those gaps?
Well, that's a very good question. As many people are probably aware now, it's very easy to become a party member. For the Liberals, you just have to register online without a donation. For the Conservatives, I believe you pay $15. For NDP, I believe it's $10. There, at the time of a party membership registration, there is no identity or residence verification currently, which is very concerning to me because those party members eventually get a ballot in their mail and they can vote in leadership races. They can participate in local nomination contests of MP candidates.
Okay.
I think parties do lack the funding for this. Of course, I think the government should help parties. Of course, at the end of the day, membership is a barter and bread for the parties. But I do think there are a few ways. For example, when you mail in your ballots, I think parties can collaborate with the candidate post to do an identity verification. Banks have been sending, especially those online banks, they have been sending people to candidate posts to do identity verification. Since those party members are going to candidate posts anyways to mail in their ballots, I think the government and the parties at the federal level should collaborate with CP to make sure that the person is a registered member. What they could also do is, for example, using Interact at the time of a party membership registration, make sure that this person is authentic. It's not a foreign actor with a Russian or even North Korean IP address registering for this party membership. I think once these loopholes are closed, the public can be much more certain that our electoral process is robust, both at the general election level, but also at the party level, concerning about the nomination process of MP candidates, concerning about the leadership races of party leaders.
Okay. And do you think that, do you have concerns leading up to the next election?
I do. I think they need to address this issue. They need to make sure that the person who are participating in the nomination contest of local MP candidates should be verified. The identity has to be verified. Make sure that they meet the party membership criteria. Of course, what the party membership criteria should be would be a totally different story, but I do think the identity verification must be in place. Otherwise, there will be mis and disinformation online. As long as we keep the loopholes open, there will be mis and disinformation.
Okay.
So the government has to take its part, in my opinion, address those loopholes. If there is no loopholes, there should be less dis and misinformation.
I'm
Sure.
just going to take a call here, if you don't mind, Ronaldo. Carrie is joining us from Surrey. How concerned are you about disinformation, and what are some tools that are needed, Carrie?
I'm extremely extremely concerned and bordering on frightened. It's I think what we need to look at is look at the United States as an example. Misinformation isn't just misrepresenting opinions on a certain subject. It's being weaponized. It's being used as a tool. You can add that with gaslighting, where when someone tries to combat, hey, that's not true, and they turn around and use the term wokeism or call them names to shut them down. And this is not only happening in the United States, it's happening in Canada. I think one thing that the Foreign Interference Inquiry, I wish they had talked about, unfortunately it was only until 2021, but what happened after, what happened during the Freedom Convoy, about how Russia used the Freedom Convoy and amplified it in order to distract from their invasion into Ukraine. So we are in very dangerous territory. I think we need to, first and foremost, anyone listening needs to turn off Twitter, X, whatever you need to call it. He has told us he's weaponizing it, so just shut it off. Whenever you hear misinformation on the radio or the news, call them, tell them, send links and facts. We really have to do our due diligence right now, and I'm glad that was what was highlighted in the report, and I hope more people listen to it.
Carrie, thank you so much for the call from Surrey. And so as we wrap up here, what advice do you have then for the public, Ronaldo, in terms of trying to weed out disinformation, misinformation? She's saying get off Twitter. What advice would you have for voters?
Well, I'm probably going to stay on Twitter, quite frankly, or other social media. I mean, the public has to do its own diligence to check whether something they're reposting, they're telling their friends are true. But again, I think there is something the government has to do on its own part as well. As long, for example, the identity verification process we were just talking about shortly.
But for disinformation, what can the government do on that?
For sure. I think concerning about foreign interference, the government should do something, for example, like a BBC or Voice of America have been doing, informing the diaspora group, doing some outreach to them. I think those groups are the most vulnerable to foreign interference. If we're just leaving them alone, they are gonna stick to what they have been reading, for example, on WeChat. And toward the wider public, I agree. It's concerning that there are mis and disinformation out there. So I am sad to see that the fact checkers are now gone with the election of Trump. On a few
on Twitter
and social media platforms, including Facebook and Twitter. All I can say is that do your own diligence, check whether something is true, something has been reported out there before spreading that information. We know that news outlets like RT, or formerly known as Russian Today, have been very active in Canada and in other fellow democracies across the world. So check your source, who is reporting this. Check whether this is true before you spread out to friends, to families, or just reposting it on social media.
Ronaldo, good to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Ronaldo Au-Yeung. He's a grad student at the University of Notre Dame and has written a research paper on election interference, and doing his master's as well at in political science at Simon Fraser University. It's now 12:25. This is BC Today. Now, Saturday, February 1st, is the potential deadline from U.S. President Donald Trump's threatened 25% tariff. So today, Premier David Eby will be speaking to media about that threat. That's coming up at 1:30, about an hour from now. Now, he's floating the idea of banning U.S. liquor imports to BC. And we spoke with a winery owner yesterday. We got this email from Jeffrey, who writes from Denman Island. And Jeffrey writes, the last time Trump slapped tariffs on Canada on steel and aluminum, a raft of countervails were applied against U.S. imports, including Kentucky and Tennessee bourbon. I wondered if I should pay the extra, as there were several dollars added. I asked the BC liquor agent if there were any Canadian-made bourbons, and he said yes, but the terms of NAFTA prohibit any distillery outside of Kentucky and Tennessee from being labeled as bourbon. So rather, the small craft distillery near Ottawa bottled bourbon-style Canadian whiskey. All right, so he also found out that there was a back order for the next 2 years for those products. And Jeffrey goes on to write, it wasn't a ban on bourbon, but I read that it did have a negative impact on sales of those exports, Canada being by far their biggest foreign customers. Jeffrey, thank you very much. You can email us bctoday@cbc.ca. Well, U.S. tech stocks seem to be steady today after dropping sharply yesterday when the Chinese chatbot DeepSeek hit the market. Now, DeepSeek claims it's been able to do what U.S. AI does, but at a cost of just $6 million. So what exactly is DeepSeek and why is it causing such a ruckus? I'm joined by technology analyst and journalist Carmi Levy. Hi, Carmi.
Hi, Michelle. So great to be with you.
Great to talk to you. Can you explain for those of us who don't know just the basics? What is DeepSeek, first of all?
Well, anyone who's used ChatGPT over the past couple of years, DeepSeek is a competitor to that. It's really a model. So it's known as a large language model. They call it R1. And that's the technology that powers the DeepSeek AI chatbot. And so you could download the app, DeepSeek, in the Apple or Google App Store, just like you do ChatGPT. And you can ask it any question and it'll answer it. And what's different, though, is that it comes from China, not the US. And as you mentioned in the intro, it was developed for really a shoestring. Under $6 million is incredibly cheap to develop one of these really complex tools. And what's even more notable is that it runs on not the latest and greatest computer hardware, the most sophisticated chips. It runs on older chips. And so the reason that we saw the stock market take such a hit yesterday is all the assumptions about artificial intelligence, about the Americans' lead in AI, that it costs hundreds of millions of dollars or even billions of dollars to develop a new model and then to power it, and that you need to build billions of dollars worth of data centers and power them because they need huge amounts of compute resources. Well, all that just got turned on its ear, tossed out the window because China just figured out a way to do it on the cheap. It's almost like AI's Sputnik moment where China suddenly thumbs its nose at the US and says, we can do it better and cheaper than you. And so investors kind of freaked out, as you would expect them to, saying, if all that value that we've been putting into these companies is no longer worth it because your technology isn't leading, we're going to go find something else to invest in.
My guest is Carmi Levy. He's a technology analyst and journalist joining us from London, Ontario. If you have a question about DeepSeek, you can call us as well, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. We'll get an explainer for you. If you want to email it over, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. We'll be back with Carmi Levy in just a moment. And then in about 10 minutes from now, we'll talk about the Junos coming up and ask you, what does an event like the Junos mean for BC's music scene? I just made a song right there. That's all coming up after the CBC News Update. And here's Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. One of the two men who assassinated Rapudaman Singh Malak apologized during his sentencing hearing today, saying he was young and dumb when he took on the hired hit. Tanner Fox told the court he knew nothing he could say would bring Malik back. Malik, who was acquitted on charges of the 1985 Air India bombing, was shot dead in his vehicle in July 2022. A Dutchman will not be able to avoid his Canadian sentence for tormenting teen Amanda Todd. Aidan Cobham was tried and given a 13-year sentence here in BC before being returned to the Netherlands, where he was serving a sentence for other offenses. That sentence was converted to 6 years by Dutch authorities. Cobham had fought to have the Canadian sentence reduced to no jail time, but the Netherlands Supreme Court has upheld the converted sentence. And the federal government is readying an aid package for when U.S. President Donald Trump imposes 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. It will be similar to pandemic relief aimed at helping affected workers and businesses. Parliament is currently prorogued and would need to be in session to approve some of the programs. And now the BC forecast: on the north coast, rain this afternoon with a high of 4, highs around 2 and mainly cloudy in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, a chance of flurries with a high of -2, highs around -1 with lots of sunshine in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, mainly cloudy with a high of -1 as well. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria, and the Fraser Valley, sunny this afternoon with highs reaching 7 degrees. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Thanks very much, Rob.
You're welcome.
It's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. This is BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks so much for being with us. And we're talking about the Chinese-made chatbot DeepSeek that really has caused a stir, not only in the tech world in the United States, but also the stock market there. And we're talking to a technology analyst and journalist as well, Carmi Levy. If you have a question about it, you can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. All right, Carmi, I actually went to the App Store just to check it out, and the top review says, the headline is better than ChatGPT. So, okay, how does it compare? Like, are they shaking in their boots over in the United States?
They are worried, and in fact, the first round of what we call benchmarks, so basically sanctioned tests that pit these tools against each other, they run these AI platforms through a series of tests and then measure how they perform. And when it comes to performing kind of consumer-type questions that we would be normally throwing at ChatGPT, in fact, DeepSeek performs better. It's faster, it's more precise, covers more data. Now, that comes with an asterisk. If you ask it, for example, about Tiananmen Square or anything about internal Chinese politics, it will tell you it can't answer that. So there are limits on it considering where it comes from. They have deliberately limited the software. So there's that. There's the kind of its political genealogy that is potentially problematic if you are, say, doing research on that country. But also the fact that it is connected to China, right, is that, just like TikTok, we argued about it. Yeah. All of our data is going potentially exposed to the Chinese government. It's the same thing here. And in fact, I would worry more about an AI model than I would about an app that lets me watch videos. And so still to be determined is how effectively this app will perform when we throw industrial grade challenges at it. In some cases, so for example, if you're a large company, government agency, the military, whatever it is, if it can do the consumer stuff well, it hasn't been tested on anything more heavy duty. So on the one hand, it is concerning to American companies because it does kind of show them up on the popular stuff, but there's still a bunch of other testing to be done to determine whether China really has leapfrogged the U.S. And exactly what the U.S. needs to do to respond. So concerned, but it's not game over. This is going to be a very long war. This is just the first battle.
On those concerns, we have a call from Pete in Vancouver. Hi, Pete. Welcome.
Hi.
Yeah. What's your question?
My question, given that the new Wired article saying that, quote, DeepSeek's popular AI is explicitly sending U.S. data to China, unlike the way that Chinese state intelligence firm Huawei did it, making it so leaky that anyone could sort of get at it. What are the threats to Canadians using this, and how are the different ways could they possibly use that to sort of do customized targeted malware down the road to us, let alone other sorts of things? I know all Other companies, just even the American ones, can do evil things, but the Chinese totalitarian state is a little bit more advanced at them and a little bit less regulated. Not that they're regulated.
Absolutely.
The concerns there around security. Yeah, good question, Pete. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic question. In fact, I think we can draw parallels between DeepSeek and the discussions we've been having around TikTok, because we know all apps collect a certain amount of data for various purposes. For the most part, marketing, direct marketing, targeted. It's one thing when Facebook collects information on you to serve up ads. It's quite another when TikTok collects even more information, and then that's not only used to serve up ads, but it's also potentially shared with the Chinese government, and they'll use that for mass surveillance. They'll use that to learn what Canadians are up to. We just had the Foreign Interference Inquiry deliver its report, and the fuel for that activity is data lifted off of apps just like this. Now, when we're talking about an AI model, the amount of data that is being lifted, the amount of insights that are being collected, much more so than just a simple app like TikTok. So we're moving into the next level of potential for Chinese government surveillance and how it can be used against us. Take your pick. It can be used to influence us in the lead up to an election. It can be used to market certain things to us. It can be used to maybe change the way we perceive certain government actions, either domestic or foreign. It can be used in all sorts of ways. And even though we might think that our individual actions, the things we do on our devices, how we use an app like DeepSeek, that nobody cares about, I can guarantee you that foreign governments, including the Chinese government, are very interested in what makes Canadians tick, because it gives them geopolitical advantage, and they'll throw artificial intelligence at the giant pile of data that they collect so that they can then tweak how they respond to Canadians, how they involve themselves in Canadian internal affairs. And if we think that isn't happening, we're supremely naive.
Well, you hit the mark there when you said, individuals may not think that they just think this is just, them using on their own individually an app, not thinking about the bigger picture. It almost goes to, social media and disinformation as well. So what should individuals who are downloading this because it seems to work better at the consumer level for them, what should we be thinking and keeping in mind?
We have to start, stopping ourselves every time we download an app, and we have to start asking some questions before we hit the download button. What do we want to get out of this app? Have we done our due diligence on the company that brings us the app? Are we comfortable with who they are and that they will potentially be seeing some very sensitive information collected from our devices? Have we read the terms of use policy? We probably haven't, but we should. And is there another option that's a little bit closer to home? In other words, if there are three options, I can use DeepSeek, ChatGPT, or Google Gemini, and those are the top three apps in the App Store right now, DeepSeek being number one. Would I be more comfortable with an option originating in China or an option originating in the US? We have to become better stewards of the apps that we download and the things that we do on our devices. And I do an audit on my phone regularly, and I look at all the apps that I have, and the apps that I'm either not using or that I'm not comfortable with or haven't done that due diligence because maybe I downloaded them a long time ago and they're gathering dust in the corner of my phone, I will get rid of them. I'll ditch the account and I'll get rid of the app, because then it's no longer collecting information on me in the background. We have to start reducing our data footprint, and it starts with our smartphone, but of course any other device that we're using too.
Does it help if I turn off, asking for a friend, if I turn off the tracking in the background, that option?
It certainly helps. Apple got a lot of headlines when they made that the default. We started getting those messages, should I turn off background app tracking? And the short answer is yes, we should. Whenever we're given the option of sharing more or sharing less, we should always share less or not share at all. Do we want them to, do we want them to put also, cookies on our devices, or do we want to refuse cookies? The best answer is refuse cookies. And so by all means, always pull that back. And even after you've installed an app, if you're still using it, you can go into the settings and you can start denying permissions that you might have granted previously. But of course, as we've seen with most users, most of us can't be bothered to take the time. But very silently, insidiously in the background, that means that we're leaking a lot of data. And that can come back to bite us in some way. And it's annoying. We get all sorts of ads that are very targeted to us, and that's one form of annoyance. But as we've seen, when we start involving other countries that may not have our best interest at heart, that can come back to bite us in all sorts of other different different ways. And we can kind of clamp down on that by reducing the flow of data in the first place. But it takes a little bit of homework to make that happen.
All right, I've got some homework to do when I get get back home, Carmi. Thank you.
Right there with you, Michelle.
So great to have you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate being here.
Carmi Levy is a tech journalist and analyst. Well, thanks for joining us here on CBC Radio 1 and CBC Television and live streaming as well on the radio. Here's what's coming up in your region in Metro Vancouver, and here's what's on the coast.
Good afternoon, Michelle. I'm Amy Bell, and I've been, of course, sitting in for Gloria Makarenko here on the coast, but she will be back in the host chair this afternoon, and quite a great show coming up as well. We will be speaking to BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau. Of course, she's made announcements about party leadership today, and she will be our guest coming up later this afternoon. We're also going to learn about auspicious plants as we get ready to welcome in the year of the snake ahead of the Lunar New Year. And our story producer, Caroline Chan, will bring us that on the coast starting at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and hope you can join us.
Thank you very much, Amy. That's Amy Bell, who has been guest hosting on the Coast on CBC Radio 1 in Metro Vancouver. And you'll hear Gloria Makarenko today. And also, as she mentioned, Sonia Furstenau will be their guest. She's just announced that she is stepping down as leader of the BC Green Party. And in other news, in about 45 minutes from now, Premier David Eby will be speaking and addressing the upcoming deadline, it sounds like, and the threats of tariffs across the board, blanket 25% tariffs being threatened by U.S. President Donald Trump. The date that he gave in an answer to a question was February 1st. And so the premier is going to be speaking coming up at 1:30. And you can watch that on our website and our streaming service as well. CBC's Dan Burrett will be hosting that for you in 45 minutes from now. This is CBC. Well, the 54th Juno Awards takes place in Vancouver on March 30th, and it's going to be hosted by none other than Michael Bublé, and you can watch and listen to it on CBC platforms. Now, in the lead up, CBC is holding a concert series to celebrate local talent. We're calling it Road to the Junos. I'll be hosting tomorrow night's concert at the Pearl in Vancouver, and it features the Latin sounds of Locarno and the groovy tunes of Empanadas Ilegales. Well, tonight you can see the singers I Am the Living and Haley Wallace. I Am the Living was here with us for our Make the Season Kind fundraiser, and wow, so good. On Thursday, Ayla Tesler Mabe and Art Deco and his Demon Band will be performing, all at the Pearl. And so we're asking you, what do those big events like the Junos mean for the local music scene here in BC? And who are your favorite local artists? What do you think they need to thrive? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And we do have a pair of tickets to give away to one lucky caller. You can go to any of the concerts I've mentioned tonight, tomorrow, or Thursday. And joining me for this conversation is Tom Landa, a Juno Award-winning musician and the leader of Locarno, performing tomorrow night. Hi, Tom. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I am really looking forward to hosting tomorrow night's concert.
It's going to be fun.
What do you think people should expect?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. As I just mentioned, it's going to be a night of Latin music. Empanadas Ilegales, who's the other band that we're playing with, they focus on cumbia that comes mostly from Colombia. And Locarno, which is the band I play in, focuses more on Mexico musical idioms. So son jarocho, son huasteco, mariachi-infused stuff. But it's all done in a sort of modern package with drums and bass and horn section. And so it's going to be fun. Yeah.
Get ready to dance. I saw some bongos in there as well when I was watching one of the performances. And this is very different from your other project, right? The Paper Boys, for which you have won and been nominated for Junos. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a different project. I with the Paperboys, we'd been doing some stuff that was sort of Latin adjacent, if you will, like a couple sort of Latin grooves and singing a couple songs in Spanish. But I studied in Mexico a traditional folk style known as son jarocho, and I got a Canada Council grant to do that. So I went down there, and when it came back, I was just really fired up, and I really wanted to do more of it. But I thought that having the Paperboys do a 180 and just focus solely on Latin music would have been too much.
Right.
So I created a different project for it, and it's now that project is going to be 15 years old next year, and it's just so much fun, and it's been rewarding, and it's been a challenge in the most wonderful of ways. Yeah.
Now, you have Mexican roots.
I do. I was born and raised in Mexico City. Yeah.
And so what was it like for you? What is son jarocho, and what was it like for you to go explore that?
Yeah, well, son jarocho is a Mexican folk music style that comes from the East Coast, from the Gulf of Mexico area, Veracruz specifically. And yeah, and I was born and raised in Mexico, so that music would have been all around me. When I was growing up, I was into all sorts of music, not traditional folk music. I was mostly into like heavy metal and things
exactly.
that teens were into. But the music was around me. It would have been at parties. It would have been all around when you go out your door.
Yeah.
And so really for me, I moved to Canada when I was in my teens, and when I moved to a small town in Ontario, and I did my best to sort of adapt to my new culture, learn all about it, straighten out my accent, and I just really wanted to belong and be Canadian. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I rediscovered my Mexican roots.
Wow.
And it was through music. So I'll always be grateful to music for bringing me back home.
Wow, that sure hits home for me. Work on your accent as a kid and try and fit in as much as you can and listen to Canadian music.
Yeah.
Let's take a call here. We are asking you, when you think about the Junos, what are those big events that help out, or do they give a boost to BC's local music scene? And do you have a favorite artist from British Columbia? I'd love to hear from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Gary's calling us from Vancouver. Hi, Gary. Welcome.
Yeah, hi. Thanks.
And so do you want to talk about a BC artist or two?
Yeah, actually, they've only come a lot more into the bigger limelight more recently, but they're originally out of Alberta, and that is Blue Moon Marquee. And they live on Vancouver Island now.
Wow.
And I've seen them live, and they're doing all kinds of brilliant things. They're kind of unique. Their work embodies a lot of genres. And anyway, they've just in the last year or so, they've started winning a bunch of awards. And this last year, I think they just won the Blues Award. It was the Maple Blues Award, I believe.
Nice.
Yeah, and they're really, really fun.
So kind of like swing, blues, jazz, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome. That's awesome.
The core of the group is just a married couple, the man and woman, and he plays guitar, and he sings in a very, very low, gravelly voice. And
Love
like
that.
You could think, it's really neat. It takes me back to people like Leon Redbone and that kind of thing. And Jasmine on the drums, she's a bass player, and on stage she plays the stand-up bass, and she's got some kind of rig where she can play the drums and cymbals with her feet and her legs. And she's got a cymbal which she wears this great big ring across all of her fingers, and every once in a while she'll take her hand off of the bass strings and smack that cymbal with the big cymbal playing ring. And I mean, it's just amazing how she can do all of that, with one brain. Is just staggers the imagination.
Multi-instrumentalist, but also multitasker on stage, big time.
I believe she plays horns too, but not on stage. No. And now that they're getting they're doing more and more gigs and touring constantly and getting so popular, they've now pretty much picked up a full-time organ player, which really adds a whole new dimension to the thing. And then, as well as that, on the larger venues, they have been picking up sax players, one in particular, but now there's a woman that I noticed in their last postings that is playing with the band.
That is so cool, Gary. You're a fan. And I can see why. I mean, they sound amazing.
Yeah, no, you gotta see them.
I'm gonna have to check them out.
They're touring all over the province.
I'm gonna have to check them out. Gary, thank you so much for the call. And I love that they're picking up new players, Tom. And for yourself, when you were putting together Paperboys, when you were putting together Locarno, what was it like to try and find musicians to fill what the sound that you were looking for, the instruments that you were looking for?
Well, back when I started the Paperboys, Paperboys are 32 years old now. Wow. So it was done through musician wanted ads at the back of the Georgia Straight. I don't know if you remember.
This is pre-LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah, pre-internet, pre-everything. But that's how I met a lot of the people that were in the first incarnations of the Paperboys. And with Locarno, it was more people that I knew from the Vancouver and Victoria music industry.
Yeah, perhaps having collaborated with and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What is, can you describe for me that scene of people, working together and just crossing over to different bands and groups? What's the state of that?
Oh, I think Vancouver, I think the West Coast has a really healthy scene, a lot of people supporting one another, a lot of people going to each other's shows, and just a plethora of fabulous, wonderfully talented musicians that are based here in Vancouver. Sadly, I don't think we have enough venues for the amount of talent that we have, and this is a problem that our city faces, but we certainly are not short on talent. We have so much of it. And as I said, everyone's supportive of one another, which is lovely to see.
Yeah. What about rehearsal space?
I don't know. I don't rehearse.
Right? You just show up.
No,
and the magic ensues.
Not quite, but no, we. There are some rehearsal spaces. We're lucky. A couple of our members in Locarno work at the Sarah McLachlan School of Music.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes we get a chance to use that space to rehearse. We're actually rehearsing tonight. So there you go.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's take another call. I'm joined by Tom Landa, who's the band leader of Locarno. They're playing tomorrow night over at the Pearl along with Empanadas Ilegales. I'm so excited to be hosting that as part of Road to the Junos, which is CBC's concert series promoting local acts. We would love to hear from you. What do these events like the Junos mean for the local music scene? And who's an artist that you're really enjoying, and what's needed for that artist to thrive? Again, 604-669-3733. We do have tickets to give away as well to one lucky caller. Alan is next now in Vancouver as well. And are you a musician yourself, Alan?
I play some flute and also a little guitar, but my main thrust is actually professional photography, and I also do a lot of photography of musicians and performance.
Nice. Amazing. Okay, so tell us about, what these kinds of events mean for yourself, a photographer, the artists themselves, and everyone involved in the industry.
Well, that's I have not photographed a Juno yet. I would be very interested in being connected with someone to let me know about the opportunity for that.
I'll pass that along.
All right, that would be great.
No connections whatsoever, but yeah. Okay.
Right. Well, as far as the connections for musicians, it's obviously a tremendous opportunity for them to profile their talent and their music, and get it before the public eye, and of course have people like yourself, be interviewing them, and so forth, to further their career, and especially in this day and age, of course, of streaming and so forth. This is radio is still right at the top of the list.
Yeah. and live music.
Live music, of course. Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Alan, I'm so glad you called, because that gives me a real, it just brings to mind, the difficulties that musicians had over the pandemic, how hard it was when you weren't performing, but it also meant all the supporting actors, shall we say, in that industry were also affected. What's the bounce back been like? Has it been enough?
Oh, I think it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
I think a lot of money was poured into the arts post-pandemic to help venues and festivals and artists, musicians, bands So at the moment, honestly, I'm probably busier than like last year. 2024 was busier than sort of pre-pandemic days.
Wow.
So it's good. I think obviously the industry sectors of the industry are still suffering. I think festivals particularly are very hard.
We've heard that.
To make go into the black and not stay in the red. Even at a sellout, it's hard for festivals to make money without the funding. So I think that's part of our sector that is still hurting. But yeah, I think it was nice to have the support of people online during the pandemic, but just so lovely to now have the support of people at the shows and the venues offering gigs. So it's been good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure the demand is there as well because people are craving that.
Absolutely. You'll never had a conversation with someone about AI, and although AI could make music, sure, but it'll never replace live music. So that's an important.
That's a good reminder.
Yes, yeah.
Basil is our last caller on this in Port Coquitlam. Hi, Basil.
Hi, yes, thanks for the program,
Yeah.
Michelle. Yes, Shoe Shakers. They're a Port Coquitlam couple, and they're a bit middle-aged, I guess, and they're just fantastic. Do you know the best dance music there is? Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Well, do you?
Sure.
I wonder. The best dance music, and they pay ballroom dance music for seniors. They go to seniors' homes all over the Vancouver Lower Mainland and play the best dance music you can get, and that's music from the 50s. And
Basil?
if you want good ballroom dance music, they're just amazing. He plays the accordion, she plays the drums, they play other instruments, and they got great voices, and they just play all the old 50s music, and the seniors just love them.
Basil,
People
thank
love
you
to dance
so
to
much.
The old 50s.
That's right. The aptly named the Shoe Shakers from Port Coquitlam. Just about a minute left here. What do you think will be the impact of having the Junos back in Vancouver?
Oh, I think it's wonderful. I think it'll be an injection of energy into our city, and it's good. I feel sometimes living on the West Coast, we get a bit ignored by the music industry. It's mostly Toronto-centric.
Right.
So it's nice when events like the Junos happen here, or whatever festival or events that come to Vancouver. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it'll be wonderful for our city.
I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah. And I guess there is rehearsal this time.
There is.
Of course, your success comes with like years and years and years of experience. I'm not at all saying
Oh, no,
there's
we still
nothing
need the
behind it.
rehearsal, yeah.
Okay. Tom Landa is a Juno Award-winning musician, and he's the leader of Locarno. They're performing tomorrow night at the Pearl in Vancouver. That's part of CBC's Road to the Junos. And Alan, congratulations. You win a pair of tickets. We'll contact you for you to find out how you can get those tickets. Thanks for joining us.